Okay, so this is going to be a quick little lesson on the types of um, stroke Gothic lettering you should be using for any of future drawings that we do in this class. So what I've got set up here is these red dots that we have here are all measurements I made using a scale. And I use the 1/8 of an inch on the end here to measure the height of the text. And then I used a 1/16 of an inch for a spacer between the lines of text, and then another 1/8 of an inch, then 16th, and then an 1/8, and so on. So I'm going to add one more layer to this by putting in a little dot. And then I'm going to go an 1/8 of an inch down from there. So you see those two new dots. You're just going to simply line up your straight edge and put in your construction lines. So construction lines, or guidelines they're called, for standard text is an 1/8 of an inch. For title text, let's do that just below it here. Let's put a title on this. For title text, you want to use a 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go with, there's a 1/4 of an inch there. And you use your guidelines, and your text height should all be the same all the way across. So this is title text. Text height, and it should be at 1/4 inch. And then this is going to be general text height. And it's going to be at 1/8 of an inch. So you see the guidelines help to make sure that the lettering is the same size all the way across. And I'm using the same exact lettering format all throughout my my lettering, so that I should not be able to see anybody's personal signature in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the alphabet. It's going to get a little bit boring, but the reason I'm going to do it like this is because I want you to see the techniques that I use to make each one of the letters and numbers. So starting with A, you're going to create an upside down V first, and make sure you're hitting both those top and bottom guidelines. So I just realized I wasn't really paying attention to my guidelines, even though I have them drawn. I need to really make sure I'm stopping and starting the tops and bottoms of my letters right on those guidelines. So B, you're going to put in the back of the B first, and you can give yourself a hand by putting in a really skinny E at first, and then wrapping the two round ends of the B to the ends of that reference point you made. For C, don't try to make the entire C all at once, because then you're never going to hit those top and bottom guidelines. So go back and add the curls to the C afterwards. So with D, put just a top and bottom reference line, that's a little straight line, and it makes it easier to create this shape. F and E, I should say first, and F are really easy. G started off like a C. Add the little extra, and then add the little line there. I actually put an extra line there, I shouldn't have. H, I is just a single line. J, you're going to notice that I stopped just short, kind of go about halfway, and then I'm going to put in the bottom part of the J, like a little tiny U, so to make sure I hit that bottom guideline. K, L. Now with M and N, make the two sides first. Makes it a lot easier. N. And then O is two Make it a C first and then go around to the other side and try to make that closed up. It's not always going to be perfect, but you'll find that it's pretty good. I'm going to do that P over again because I didn't like how that came out. That's a little bit better. Q is like a O again, but with a little line. R. Now S is tricky. Again, don't try to make the whole thing. You see how I've kind of made a short S, and then you go back and add the others. T is very easy. U, you're going to draw similar to how we did like halfway with the J, and then put that little U at the bottom. V, and then W is literally two V's. X, Y, just do a single line about halfway up from the bottom guideline, and then add the top of the Y. And Z, you're going to do the top and bottom edges of the Z, and then connect. So there's your alphabet, and you can see that there's consistency right across, and I'm using the correct letter form for everything. And you can practice this the same way I'm doing it. If you make a mistake like I did here, just go ahead and try it again. Okay, now for letters, there's our letters. For numbers, so see how there's another guideline, a separate one for the numbers here. We'll put it right below. Just going to do 1. A 2 would be like this, and then go back and add the curl afterwards. 3 can either be like this or like this. 4 is supposed to look like that. Now I know some of you are probably used to drawing your 4s like this. It can be mistaken as an H. There's a lot of reasons why this single stroke Gothic is the style that's being used more universally through all the disciplines, and it's because it's less likely to be misread. It's also very important to make sure you include that little line past the edge of the 4 there. 5. 6s are tricky. So here's my favorite thing to do with 6s. Actually, 6s aren't tricky. It's 9s that are tricky. I'm sorry. So a 6 is just like starting it off like a C, and then add a little circle at the bottom. So there's a 6. 7, no line in the 7. 8 is 2 circles or little ovals, one on top of the other. Avoid doing 8s like this, because what can start to happen is they can start to lean and get messy. Now 9 is the one I meant to show you the trick. Do a 6 upside down, and it will always be a perfect 9. And then the only other number I forgot was 0, and you'll see that it looks the same as O. So a lot of times avoided for callouts are 1s, 0s, and Qs, because they get mistaken too often as 1 could be an I or a 1, and a 0 can be an O or a 0, and Q, if you don't really see that little line in there, you might not notice it. So when you're looking at things like column bubbles and callouts, you might notice that I is skipped and goes right to J, and that would be the reason why. So there's your lettering lesson. See the importance of guidelines. If I don't use guidelines, then my letters aren't going to stay nice and straight and the same height all the way across. And I'm being careful to hit each guideline as I go.